puppies. Hello, happy Wednesday, everyone. We are just absolutely crazy in my kitchen this morning because today we're getting pickled. So, hang out with me and we will have some fun figuring out what it is that we can do when we're on keto and what we have to give up. This is one of my favorite topics because, pardon me, one of the things that I hear all the time is that keto is not sustainable because it's too restrictive. You have to give up way too many things that you love. And when you have to give up things that you love, you're not going to stick with it. So let's talk about that, because I am here to tell you that keto is exactly as restrictive as you choose it to be. Now let's just make sure that I can see who's here and who's chatting. Now today we are going to make sweet and sour cauliflower pickles. Have you ever made pickles? Okay, so we are canning things. And that means that we're not only going to have them for today, but we're going to have them for tomorrow and next month and throughout the winter. This is something that people used to do all the time. And you don't see it as much anymore. And maybe you have a family member that still does canning. There are still some young girls out there that are learning how to do canning from their moms and their grandmothers, their aunts, whoever. Maybe their dads, I don't know. But I do want to show you one of the things that I don't want to give up because I really enjoy them is bread and butter pickles. Now, bread and butter pickles, if you go to the grocery store, I don't care what brand you buy, they are absolutely full of sugar. They are definitely not good for you. So, I made my own bread and butter pickles. Now, this one is not in a canning jar, it's just in a pickle jar because it was going straight into my fridge. Now, I did do another one that is in a canning jar. And so this one is canned and ready for winter. This one is a spiced dill pickle chip. So there you go. We have all kinds of options. If pickles are something that you love, don't give them up. Learn how to make them yourself. And you can learn how by hanging out here with me today. Okay, so we're going to set these aside. And we are going to get busy with our cauliflower pickles. Now this is one that I'm doing because I know for a fact that it is my husband's favorite. Now I started a little bit early without you, not as early as I wanted to, but still a little bit earlier. Okay, so I have a full head of cauliflower. Now I'm cutting it into small florets. And you can see that they're just wee little bits. I'm going to put them in this bowl. And since I do have a production crew here today, I am going to send them off to get rinsed once I get this done. Now, I am also adding the cauliflower stems. Not everybody does this, and you certainly don't have to, but I want you to know that you do not have to toss it out. And it's one of my favorite parts of eating cauliflower is the raw or pickled stem. So in my world, the stem gets cut into pickle-sized pieces and gets tossed in the bowl as well. You want to make sure the florets are fairly small. You want them to be bite-sized, although I know if I made them huge, my husband would not be at all upset. And we want about 2 pounds. 2 or 3 pounds, and we're going to get these cut up, and then we're going to get the brine made before we cut the onions up, because this is going to be cauliflower and onion. Now usually if you buy pickled cauliflower in the store, you're going to find pearl onions in them, and I am not going to do pearl onions today. I'm going to do white onions, and they are going to be absolutely delicious. Now, I want you to watch your cauliflower. This is really important. if you see, there is just a wee tiny little mark on there. It's nowhere near bad, but you want to make sure that you trim that off, because you don't want anything that isn't perfectly perfect in your mix. And if you have a floret that is a little bit big, just cut it in half. Okay, so we're going to get this in here. And we can just break these ones off because they're pretty small. And we've got another stem that we're going to put in there. Now, not just the stems off the florets, but also the big stem. Right? This is out of the center of the cauliflower. Usually this gets tossed in the compost bin. Not in my world, it doesn't. We are going to make sure that all of the green that's on here is off. So we're just going to trim this. And this is going to make an absolutely delicious cauliflower pickle. Okay, so that is nice and trimmed. A little bit of the white is fine. And realistically, even if you put the cauliflower leaves in, now when I started with the full head of cauliflower, it had all of these brilliant, beautiful leaves on it, and those are edible. I'm not just sure what you would do with them. Maybe I need to figure that out. But let's get this out of our way. I always have my compost bucket right here because I know I'm going to need it. Okay, now let's put these in bite-sized pickle pieces, and we will throw those in as well. And then, now we're almost done here. Now, if you have a couple of heads of cauliflower, this is a great way to use them up before they go bad. Make sure that you sterilize your jars. So wash them in hot soapy water, and then I throw them in the oven on 230 degrees, and they sterilize in there. Now, a lot of times you'll see people sterilize their jars in hot water, and that's absolutely fine. I just don't have enough room when I have lots of things going on at the same time. So get this done. Now you can do these in 1 liter jars, you can do them in 500 ml jars, you can do them in 250 ml jars. You want to make an amazing gift for someone for Christmas that is keto or is thinking about being keto. And I'm putting all the little crumbs in here as well, because at the end of the jar, you can still use all those little bits. Okay. Now, we do not have to be perfect. Now, if you're going to do a small jar, like a 250 ml jar, you definitely want your florets trimmed much more precisely, especially if it's going to be a gift for someone. This is, well, I want to say it's a gift for my husband, but you know what? Let's be realistic. I love these too, so it's kind of a gift for both of us. Now, we are almost done here. Now this one, that one can go in there. I'm going to cut this one in half again, not because it's too big, but because of the shape. And this is part of the stem. And so I want everything to pack in the jar as well as it can. Now, one more floret, and we are off to the races. There are all kinds of things that you can do with cauliflower. You can make relishes, you can make pickles, you can make, I don't know. Hi, Del. You can make all kinds of things. Now, I will tell you that if you do not like cauliflower, and I promise you Del does not like cauliflower, you can make cauliflower pickles, and they may like those. Now, one of the things that I am missing today is a cup of coffee. Have you noticed I haven't even said anything about my coffee? And that is because my cup runneth dry. So let's put a little bit of sugar-free almond syrup in here. And I think I have a fresh cup of coffee in my world. And there it is. The service from my production crew is amazing. Okay, so let's move these out of the way so I can have my coffee there. You can add whatever you like to this jar. Do you want peppers in there? You can add peppers. Do you want garlic in there? You can add garlic. I'm not adding peppers, and the reason that I'm not is because they're a little bit higher in carbohydrates, and there isn't a problem with that. Peppers definitely can be keto. They are not my favorite thing pickled, and they're not Dell's favorite thing pickled. So we're not going to put peppers in. I am, however, going to put in onions. Now, I'm going to send this bowl away, and it's going to get rinsed and strained and then rinsed again. You just want to make sure that anything that is on the cauliflower that shouldn't be gets washed away. And make sure that you wash it just in lukewarm water. A little bit more to the warm side. Okay, now we're going to start the brine before we do the onions because it's going to take a little bit of time to do its briny thing. Now we're going to add 500 milliliters of water, 2 cups. We're going to add 40 grams of mustard seed. And we're going to add 2 teaspoons of pickling spice. I'll give you guys 2 guesses which company the pickling spice and the mustard seeds come from. Okay, so there is that. Now what else is in there? Water and spices, not really going to make it. So we are also going to add, my goodness, where am I? I need, oh my goodness. I need my vinegar, which I did not get out. Now, crashing and banging. Now, one thing that is important to remember is when you are using vinegar, you've got all kinds of choices. There's apple cider vinegar, there's white vinegar, there's champagne vinegar, there's 100 different kinds of vinegars. I am using white vinegar, and the reason that I'm doing that is because I'm looking for a very traditional taste. Now, my mother-in-law used to make pickled cauliflower. It was absolutely one of Dell's favorites, and I want this to be very similar to that. Now, on top of that, you can use apple cider vinegar. It is going to be a healthier option. It absolutely is. However, that apple cider vinegar is also going to give it a flavor that is not my favorite. And it definitely is not Dell's favorite. So, for this, we are going to put in one and a quarter liters of vinegar. I hope this pot is big enough. I think it is. Now, remember I said these are sweet and sour. So, okay, so that is 1 liter. I'm thinking I'm going to need a bigger pot. Oh, well. And now we need another 250 mils. So 1,250 milliliters of vinegar, and it is just white vinegar. There is a difference between pickling vinegar and normal vinegar. If you're using pickling vinegar, you don't need quite as much. So that is definitely something to keep in mind. The acid that they have, they should. Yep, this is 5% acid. Okay, so that is out of our way, and you know what? I am going to get a bigger pot. I just need a minute to find it, because I know it's here somewhere. Dum-dum-dum. Okay, well, here it is. I told you it was here somewhere. Okay, so we're going to have that in a second. Now, the next thing that we're going to need, so I just boiled some eggs and I had that on the stove, so it's just getting rinsed out by my awesome production crew. That is awesome coffee. Now, on Sunday, I told you guys that I was going to try my hand at kimchi. And I am trying my hand at kimchi. I will tell you it is not as easy as you might think. Okay, now let's get this pot on here. Okay, make sure we get all our spices in there. Now we're going to turn this on. We're going to turn it on about 4, but before we do that, one of the most important things that we're going to put in here to make it sweet and sour is sugar. Oh, we need to put in our other 250 mils of vinegar. The sugar gives it the sweet, obviously. The vinegar gives it the sour. So we are going to use erythritol. Now, today I'm using powdered erythritol. Not because I need to. I could use granular, but guess what? We have done enough cooking together here that I am out of granular erythritol right now. So we are going to get 300 mils of sugar here. No, we need to zero our scale. This is so important. 300 milliliters, not milliliters. We're going to get 300 grams. Okay. Let's see how much we can fit in this bowl. I should have had this measured out before, but I did not. So, that is 250. So we're going to dump that in and we'll get the other 50 grams because that bowl is getting pretty full. You know, here's the thing about measuring things in grams. I know I'm using a measuring cup right now, but a lot of things you don't even need your measuring cups for anymore. And I'm at 52. There we go, 50 grams, bullseye. And we are going to put this in here. Now we need this heated up. Don't want to waste that, so we'll just give it a bit of a whack. And we'll send that away. Now we're going to heat this up until the erythritol is, here, I'll just give you guys a quick peek. We want this erythritol to be dissolved and everything to be incorporated. Now you can just put your spices in the jars. It's hard to get it even. But I do, in some of the pickles, I just put in half a teaspoon per liter or per quart. Liter, quart, tomato. Pretty much the same. Okay, now these are the wasted mustard seeds. Okay, now we are going to do about 2 pounds of onions. Our cauliflower florets are done and they're waiting for us to come back and love them again, and I'm just going to send this away as well. Okay, now your onions, I'm going to show you, and I know we've done this before. I'm going to trade spots here. There we go. The top of your onion, the part that was coming out of the ground when it was in the ground still, we're going to cut that off. And the bottom, the root end of the onion, we're just going to trim a wee bit just so that we don't get any of those root hairs in our pickles, because that wouldn't be very appetizing. Okay, now it is not peeled yet. However, now let's get our let's get our camera back here so you can see what I'm doing. We're going to turn it so that the root end is up and cut it in half this way. Now we don't want, or I don't want, you can do this however you like. I don't want full circles of onions in my recipe. I want just half ones. Now, if we were doing pearl onions, we'd be putting whole onions in, but I'm not going to. Now, the root end right here, we're going to point away from the knife, and it holds our onion together for us. It makes it so much easier to slice because, okay, now I sharpened this knife before we got together, but I did not do a very good job. Now this did not fall apart, and I have the root end right here. Just held the onion together. And we're making these about 1/4 inch thick. You want them big enough that they're going to be fairly substantial. And sweet pickled onions are delicious. What kind of onions, or what kind of pickles are the favorite in your family? Are they dill pickles? Are they mustard pickles, beet pickles? Now I will say, doing keto, one thing that is not in our house anymore that I know Del misses is pickled beets. Those were always one of his favorites. And it doesn't matter how you slice it, beets are not pickled, or beets are not keto. Sadly, there are a few things, like bananas. I don't care what you do to a banana, it is not going to be keto. It is packed full of sugar. And if you are trying to avoid heart disease or high blood pressure or elevated blood sugars, bananas, beets, carrots, those things are not really going to be your friend. They are not keto. Now I've done the same thing here. I trimmed the root end, cut the top off, and then we take off the first layer of onion. Now a lot of times it looks like you don't have to go down that deep, but you want your onion to be nice and tender. So take off not just the skin layer. Now, I'll show you what I'm talking about here. So we have the skin layer right here. And if we take that off, you'll see underneath there's a little bit of green there. So that tells me that this layer of onion, it would be just fine if we were putting it in, you know, a stew or a roast, whatever. But because we're making pickles out of it, we want to make sure that we're using the beautiful white tender parts of the onion. So we're just going to take that off, and we're going to cut this onion, and we are not going to worry about it falling apart because we know how to do this. Now these pieces of onion are all going to fall apart in the bowl. Can I get one more piece off there? Maybe not. They're all going to fall apart in that bowl. So when we put them in the pickle jars, itchy nose, they are going to just be little pieces of onion, so they're going to mix right in with the cauliflower. Okay, now this does not have to take a long time. It does not have to be a full day project. You can get your vegetables ready the night before, put them in cold water in the fridge, and when you get home from work the next day, whip up a batch of brine and go to town. And I've already got my jars in the oven. Now I'm just going to trim this root end off a little bit, cut the other end off like we did with the first ones. Now sometimes you'll have an onion, and we haven't had one today that has kind of the skin growing right down the center. Just pull that out. Now you can see this one has a fair amount of green. That layer is going to be tough. We don't want that in our pickles. And besides being tough, it's not going to be pretty. And we want our jar of pickles to be pretty, right? Pickle vanity. Is that a thing? It is today. Okay. Now, you can see that our brine is getting close to being done. Now once I get all of these onions done, I'm going to send them away and just get them rinsed quickly as well. Oh, we got that as close as we could get it. Okay. Now, can you do a whole pickled onion or do full rounds? You can, maybe. But you want the vinegar to pickle the vegetables before they go bad. And one of the important parts of this process, after we get our pickles and our hot brine in the jars is they have to be processed in a canning kettle. Now, I used to have a canning kettle. I used to do a ton of canning when the kids were home. Oh, I told you, did I show you my kimchi experiment? I'll talk about this again. Now, this is, let's see if I can give you a better shot. This is a beautiful jar of beet kimchi, beet greens. Now, beet greens are keto, but beets are not. So, so far so good. We'll see what happens. It might be an epic fail. It might be the best thing I've made to eat for a while. I guess we'll find out. But I have already recruited a couple of people to try it and tell me what they think of it as far as kimchi goes. So, now this is one. We were just talking about this, so I will show you. So I trimmed the top, trimmed the bottom, and when you look in here, you can see just a wee bit of brown. This is just a little bit of onion skin. It's just gone a little bit deeper in the onion. It doesn't go in very far. We're just going to trim that off because, again, pickle vanity, right? Okay, now we're going to take that first layer under the skin off so that we've got beautiful pickles. Now this one is green, but it's also very tender. No, I think I am doing hamburgers for, oh, that's why. See, this is skin underneath. So I think I'm doing burgers for supper tonight. So we'll maybe just set this aside because it will be delicious in the burgers. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just not pretty enough for pickles. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. We're going to set this one aside. Now I have some of my onion done for my burgers. And maybe by then we will have some quick pickled cauliflowers. I'll tell you what we do have to go with the burgers tonight, and that is the bread and butter pickles that I made and the dill pickles that I made a couple of weeks ago. So, do you have a garden? And if you do, what is your favorite thing out of the garden? I think I'd be hard-pressed to tell you what my favorite thing is. Now, where are we? We are almost at a pound of onions. And I think that is, I'm looking at the amount of onions in this bowl, and I'm looking at the amount of cauliflower. And I want the proportions to be good, so I'm going to do these last 2 onions. And, like I said, if you want to put garlic cloves in, you can do that. If you want to put pieces of ginger in, you could do that. You can put in peppers. There are no rules. And we can see, I don't know, can you guys, you cannot see in the pot. Let me show you. You can see our spices are dancing in there. So this is getting close. Okay. You know, this is that time of the year when if you have not been to your local farmer's market, you absolutely want to go because there is all kinds of fresh produce out of people's gardens there. You will never get it that fresh in a grocery store. I promise you that. And it used to be that you got it a whole lot cheaper at farmers markets. And you may not get it a lot cheaper than you get it in the grocery store, but you definitely get a much higher quality because this is coming from the garden to the market to your table. So you cannot ask for fresher than that unless you are getting it out of your own garden. Now, I want to talk to you today too, while I'm doing this, I want to talk to you about the decision to do keto. So how many people do you know that are living a ketogenic lifestyle? Now, I am incredibly fortunate because most of my family is keto. Pardon me. Swallowed a bubble. So, the fact that most of my family is keto, and it's my family that we live closest to, definitely makes things much easier because when we go to a family event, pretty much everything there is keto friendly. If we invite someone to our home for a meal, we can serve everything keto friendly and it isn't an issue. Nobody raises an eye about it. Okay. But how many people do you have in your world that are keto? If you don't have any, I'm going to put this over here with those because I don't want the green part in there. If you don't have people that are keto, maybe it is your job to lead the pack. Maybe you can lead by example and help them all regain their health. Or maybe that is just not going to be a thing for them. But it is a choice that you can make for yourself, regardless of what anyone else does or doesn't do or thinks or doesn't think. If you're on the fence about keto, that's okay. Do your research. And I tell people all the time, I don't want you taking my word for this. I want you to do your research. But when you're doing that research, now I have about 1.5 pounds of onions here, and I think that is going to be about good. So I'm going to send those away to get rinsed. And we're going to mix those with the cauliflower. Now I need my spoon to stir this brine. Now for me, the sugar and the mustard seeds are the most important part. Now let's see if we can't get a wee little taste here. Make sure that we have it as sweet as we want it and as sour as we want it. That is really yummy. I don't think it is quite sweet enough. So I am going to add another, well, we'll start with 1/3 cup and we will taste again. Now I am not measuring this, or not weighing it, and I should be. Now we'll get this dissolved in here. You know, doing this taste test is important because once you get these pickles in the jar, there is no more tasting after that. Okay. Yep, we're going to do one more. Okay. So that is an additional 2/3 cup. So this would have been perfect if I was doing other kinds of pickles, and I use this recipe for other things. But because I am trying to mimic what my mother-in-law used to do, okay, I highly recommend it. Oh, excuse me. Do not inhale vinegar. Bad idea. But that extra 2/3 cup of sweetener has got this just exactly where I want it. Now, we're going to grab a 1-liter jar out of the oven. Oh my goodness, it made my eyes water. Now let's get these kind of mixed together so that we're got them even. And I'll grab the jar to cool off. Now, I'm going to be doing more than one jar for sure, but I'll only do one jar while I'm here with you today because I know that we're already over. But it is worth the wait because this is going to be awesome. Now, once we have our pickle brine, now I'm waiting for this to boil again while I'm tossing these together. Once we have our pickle brine all boiled and all of the sweetener dissolved thoroughly, now make sure that your onion bits are broken up as much as you want them. So that is going to be a nice sized pickle. It's a nice sized piece to put on a plate. So we're making sure that our onion pieces are all apart. And you can do as big or small a batch of this as you want. So how many jars do you want in your basement, your cellar, your pantry, whatever it is? The cooler it is where you store them, the better they're going to keep. Okay, now that is pretty well mixed up. If we end up with a jar of just cauliflower, I am reasonably sure that neither Del or I are going to mind. So now that we have this done, we're going to pack this jar. It's had a couple of minutes to cool. You want the jar packed fairly tight. So both cauliflower and onions, my mouth is watering already. Okay. Now, oh, you cannot see how I'm packing this jar. I've got you out of my camera view. Okay, now that piece of onion is a little bigger than I want it. Okay, now we have that packed. You want to leave about 1 inch of headroom, and then we are going to grab a ladle or a measuring cup. Actually, maybe I'm just going to use a measuring cup. Now make sure that this is well stirred up because you want the spices evenly distributed in your pickles. And it doesn't take lots and lots of brine because most of the jar is already full of cauliflower and onion. So that is about 2 cups of brine, and we're going to need, maybe I'm going to have to make another batch of this. Now that is right up to the top, and now we need a lid. Okay, now the lids as well. Oh, in the oven, 230 degrees. I highly recommend that you use oven mitts to get them out, or they are a little warmish. Now we're going to put a lid on here, and we're going to seal that. Now you'll notice, can you hear that? It kind of clicks. As these jars seal, and we're going to process this in a hot water bath. As these jars seal, this is going to pop, and you'll hear it. It'll go click, and it'll pop down. That way you know it's sealed. If you don't hear that and you can still click the top of this lid, then your jar is not sealed and you need to keep it in your fridge. It doesn't mean that it's bad. It just means that for whatever reason the jar didn't seal and you need to keep that in your fridge. Now I can do 2 jars at a time in my small pot that I'm using as a canner. So I'm just going to pack another jar here. And then, now look at how beautiful this is. We have, here I'll show you here. We have a full jar of onion and cauliflower pickles. Now if we open this right now and taste it, it will not taste like a pickle. It takes time. 24 hours, it's going to be a pretty decent depiction of what you're going to get. 2 weeks. If you can leave it alone for 2 weeks, you will have some awesome pickles. Okay, now let's pack this jar. That's a big handful of onion. Let's make sure we get lots of cauliflower in here too. I didn't let this jar cool for very long, but it is fine to pack. Now the hot water bath is incredibly important. If you don't do it, your jars are not going to seal properly and your pickles are not going to keep Ouch. Okay, now you want to, that jar is still hot, I promise you. You want to push down on your vegetables and make sure that they are packed in there really well. The less airspace there is in there, the better. Okay, so we're getting these packed down in here. Maybe one more piece of cauliflower. What do you think? I think. Now you have to leave that inch of headroom at the top. And if I don't use all of this brine right this second while we're together, that's okay. Because I can use it later. And I do have more to do. I'm just going to move this over here. I'm making a bit of a mess. And if I don't have quite enough, I will make some more brine. So you have to kind of guess how your jars are going to pack and how full you are going to be able to get them. Okay, so there is that. Now I need another lid. Now the jars and the lids need to be sterilized. You don't want bacteria growing in your pickle jar. Okay, now this, yep, that went down, good deal. So we make sure the lid is on. Okay. Make sure this ring, the canner ring, is tight, because when you put it in your hot water bath, you don't want your pickle brine leaking or the water from the hot water bath seeping in. Okay, now we are going to trade spots here. I'm going to send that away. I'm going to set this aside. And we're going to bring the hot water bath over here. And we're going to pump this up to 10. We want this boiling. Now we're going to set both of these jars in here. Now you look at, if you can see, let me show you a little bit better here. If you look at where this jar is, it's almost up to the top of the pot. Now this is for me right now, and I'm going to have to get another canning kettle. I don't know where mine went from years ago, but I'm going to have to turn this jar on its side. And that is not the recommended way to do it, but I want to make sure that my jars are sealed and that this water bath does the job that it's supposed to do. Once this gets up to a boil, I'm going to let it boil for 10 minutes, 10 to 20 minutes, and then I'm going to pull it out and I'm going to set them aside, and I am going to let them do their pickly thing at least until tomorrow. We might have to open a jar tomorrow, but hopefully for a couple of weeks. Now we've been hanging out here for a long time today, and I really appreciate your patience. Hi, Mom, I'm glad you're here. These cauliflower pickles are going to be epic, and the bread and butter pickles are amazing. So is it more expensive to make them keto? Yes, it absolutely is. Is it worth the effort and the expense? Well, for some people, yes. For other people, no. I do not have a fork, but I do have some tongs. For me, for Dell, our sweet pickles that we've been missing, they are so crunchy and so delicious. Absolutely worth the wait. Absolutely worth the effort and expense. You decide. It might be one of your days off spent doing some canning, but then you've got it for the entire winter until next farmer's market season or until your garden is ready. So it is Wednesday, and I will see you again Friday afternoon at 4 p.m. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing, but I am pretty sure that it may involve doing a taste test on some cauliflower pickles. So do your best to live your best version of this shining life. I have a big mess to clean up here, as you can see. So I am going to say farewell for now. Do your best to do keto. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to do your best. And if you do your best to live your best version of this shining life, you should be very proud of yourself. I will see you